So in a moment, you will have in front of you a page from what is called the Second New York Haggadah. It's not from New York. Most of the time, the Haggadot are designated, or the manuscripts are designated by a number. So, for example, this is manuscript number 8279. And the reason it's called the Second New York Haggadah is that it is housed as part of the JTS collection of manuscripts and folios. The document itself, we know, was created by Yoel ben Shimon, who was known for creating illustrated Haggadot. He was both the scribe and the illustrator, and we know that he was attached to this particular manuscript because there's a colophon at the end of the text which identifies him as such, right? He worked and lived in the Rhine Valley, and this particular document that you're looking at, this illustration of the beginning of Halach Ma'anya, was created in 1454. So, given its age and whatnot, remarkably free of wine stains. However, it is kind of a typical of illustrated or illuminated Haggadot of its era. You can see in the center, there's the blue background with the lettering, the first two letters, the first word of Halach Ma'anya. And then at the bottom, you see the continuation of the text. So I have to admit, I'm kind of fascinated by this image. Right? And this sort of touches a little bit on something we spoke about last night. But I want you to look at the images that are depicted here for a moment. And what are some of the things that jump out at you from this depiction? All the soldiers, okay? Why is that so jarring, striking? Okay, all right. So it's part of the backdrop of the era, but we're going to have to answer the question, why are those soldier type figures depicted as part of this grouping? Yes, Martha. Right. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. If I can borrow a phrase from the children's show, these are the people in your neighborhood. All right. This is, yeah. So on one level, he's capturing sort of his realia and the diversity of people that are on the pages is very, very manifest. Absolutely. So one of them looks like my cousin Todd a little bit. Um, yes, it does look kind of feline. You're right. Maybe Yoel Ben Shimon had a pet cat. But yes, it does look a little feline. You are right. What else? What else do you notice about our depiction here? Sorry? Okay, so Any thought as to why our artist is working in sevens? Okay, you can take it a step even beyond that. In Judaism, seven is a not only significant number, but it's a mystical number. So a 7 by 7 square makes a whole lot of sense as a motif. Plus, where else might the artist have been familiar with a 7 by 7 square? Counting the Omer, which starts on the second night of Pesach. Okay, so maybe that's part of his inspiration. Celia. If we don't count what? Okay, 40 squares for the, okay, but the Omer is 49. No, I think there's 49 squares in total. If we sort of look at the middle one as being not sort of an overlay, but that framing of 7 by 7 clearly, I think, is Omer perhaps inspired. Anything else? Yeah. Ah. Okay, so here's the thing. What did matzah look like in 1454? It would have been, right. We're accustomed to, square matzahs that come in nice square boxes off of a factory assembly line. Right? My guess is that, in fact, we're going to look at we might look at some other depictions from the Haggadah, and we'll discover that, in fact, it is matzah in his mind is round. But it's interesting that we are seeing something that he could not have necessarily anticipated or imagined. But yes, for us, a nice square like that, it's a piece of matzah. We should live in a post-Manischewitz era. Martha, and then what's your name again? Interesting. A fascinating observation. I never saw that before in looking at this. That's okay. It just adds a whole new thing. Now I just have to commission someone to make me a pillow. Just kidding. Just kidding. Jody and then Johnny. Mm.
That's probably all encompassing.
Yes, that's true. That yes, most of them are looking in toward the center. There's one or two that seem to be looking upwards, I guess, towards heaven. But there's that one looking down is kind of outlier, and I don't know, maybe looking down at I don't know what. Okay, so that's Paul Lind in the middle behind the ha. Actually, Paul Lind behind the ha kind of makes sense. Johnny.
Top right corner.
Okay.
Side of the
Outside,
square.
outside the square.
That's a
Turn it this way.
square.
Outside of the square, top left. Oh, yes, that, yeah, now I see it. Now I see it. Yes, it sort of looks like a person. Okay, that might make it even more interesting a conversation because the next question is, why is this? Oh, okay, so that actually, so your question sort of goes to the question I was uh, about to ask, which is, why does Yoel bin Shimon choose this as his depiction for Halach Ma'anya? Right, let's, think about the prayer. We touched on this last night a little bit. Halach Ma'anya, it starts about, this is the bread of poverty, this is the bread of affliction, but how does it end? Old anybody who needs a place for Pesach, anybody who's hungry, here, you're welcome at the table. Anyone who is in need, this is a safe haven. So perhaps what the artist here is giving us is a rendition of the diversity of people that are reflected in the Jewish world of his era. Right? Look, the man is a product of his era. All right. Okay. So I'm going to say something. Don't get angry. All right. They're in the kitchen. Okay. This is this guy's image of the Seder table. All right. All right. But yes, there do not seem to be any women depicted here because we don't, in 1454, I don't know whether women were really invited to be active participants in the Seder. We take it as a for granted kind of thing, but, almost 600 years ago, I don't know. I'm not sure. But it's clear, but you are correct that there are no women depicted in the little squares here. Hmm. Yes, but do we conclude that some of the non-bearded depictions are women? You could make that argument, I suppose. No, I'm not looking so much at the head coverings. I'm looking, if you look at the second square from the bottom on the left, maybe, is that like that band around the neck? Is that supposed to be like a necklace? I don't know. Is the one that's looking down and away from everybody else looking down at a child? The beauty of this is you can read into it as much as you can read out of it. But but there's clearly this real effort at creating a sense of diversity. And if in fact this is supposed to represent who could be at your Seder table, understand and appreciate that there are figures here that we would not necessarily associate with being part of the Jewish world, specifically the ones that are depicted as soldiers, and they're wearing armor. But now I'll let you in on a little clue. We're not going to talk about it other than for this second, right? If you look at some of the medieval illuminated Haggadot, and you turn to a little bit further into the Haggadah, past Halach Ma'anya, and you get to the depiction of the four sons. In the Middle Ages, the Rasha is often depicted as soldier. Okay. Now, it can't be a soldier who's an outsider, is not the enemy, right? Because the Rasha is the one who's sitting at the table. So it may very well be that Yoel ben Shimon is going like, yes, we have members of the Jewish community who have become part of the army of which we are often afraid, but the fact that they have chosen that alternate path does not disenfranchise them from being at the Seder table in the same way that, how the Haggadah chooses to handle the Rasha and how we might is different. But the idea that the soldier, the everybody has to be present at the table for this prayer, this articulation to actually have its ultimate meaning. And so perhaps part of what the text does, and this sort of brings us a little bit back to your suggestion, Martha, of the pillow. I went slightly differently, but maybe this is more like a tapestry of the experience and the family and the community that we bring together at our Pesach table. And that, maybe it even, if it were a real tapestry, would have room to grow as we add new people, whether family or friends, to the Seder table that we celebrate. Just a little something to mull on. You can feel free to take this home with you and wow your friends and neighbors at your Seder later. Okay? If you're coming to my Seder, don't bring it because I got it already. Okay. Chaverim, let me invite you to turn to your Sidurim once more. And in the middle of page 184, we'll continue with Chatzi Kaddish that introduces the Musaf service.